Kyle Morrison stood at the entrance of Zenith Academy with his backpack on one shoulder and Luna's leash in his other hand. The golden retriever sat beside him, her tail wagging slowly as she looked up at the massive glass dome above them. Stars sparkled through the transparent ceiling, and ships moved silently in the distance. Kyle had never seen anything like this back on Earth. Other students walked past them, and Kyle noticed how they stopped to stare. Some had scales, others had fur in colors he'd never imagined. A few floated rather than walked. One student looked like she was made of purple crystal, and light seemed to dance inside her body. They all looked at Luna with confusion in their eyes, or whatever they had for eyes. "Come on, girl," Kyle whispered, and they walked toward the registration desk. A tall being with blue skin and forearms looked down at them. Her face was kind, but she seemed puzzled when she saw Luna. "Welcome to Zenith Academy. I am Administrator Jira. You must be Kyle Morrison from Earth, and this is Luna. She's my therapy dog. I got permission to bring her," Kyle said, holding up his data pad with the approval documents. Jira scanned the documents with one of her hands while another hand typed on a screen. "Yes, I see the approval here. This is very unusual. We have never had a student bring another creature before." "She's not just another creature. She's my companion," Kyle explained. Jira nodded slowly. "I understand. Your room is ready. Luna will stay with you, but please keep her under control. Many students here have never seen anything like her." Kyle soon learned that Jira was right. When he walked to his dormitory building, students gathered around him. They kept a distance from Luna, whispering to each other in languages he couldn't understand. Some pointed, others took pictures with devices that floated in the air. A reptilian student with green scales and sharp teeth walked up to him. He was tall, maybe 7 feet, and his eyes were cold. "What is that thing?" he asked, his voice rough. "This is Luna. She's a dog," Kyle replied. "A dog? And why do you have it following you?" "She's my friend. We have dogs on Earth. They live with us." The reptilian student laughed, a strange hissing sound. "You keep animals as prisoners? How primitive." He turned to his friends, who also laughed. "The humans keep slaves." Kyle felt his face getting hot. "She's not a slave. She wants to be with me." "Wants?" The student leaned closer. "How can an animal want anything? You feed it so it follows you. That is not friendship. That is control." He walked away, still laughing. Kyle felt terrible. He looked down at Luna, who was watching him with her big brown eyes. She could tell he was upset. She pushed her nose against his hand and he petted her head. "It's okay, girl. We'll show them." The first week was hard. Kyle attended his classes and Luna stayed by his side. Professor Quinvera, an old teacher with silver skin and wise eyes, allowed Luna in the classroom. But the other students made it difficult. They whispered and laughed whenever Luna moved. When she yawned, they mocked the sound. When she wagged her tail, they said it proved she was just a simple animal with no real thoughts. In xenobiology class, students had to present something from their home world. Kyle was nervous when his turn came. He stood at the front of the class with Luna beside him. "This is Luna. She is a dog. Dogs are descended from wolves, and humans and dogs have lived together for more than 10,000 years. Kyle began. A student with multiple arms raised one. "You mean you took wild animals and changed them? You made them dependent on you?" "We didn't make them anything. It was a partnership. Wolves that were friendlier to humans got food from our camps. Over time, they became dogs. They helped us hunt. They protected our homes, and we took care of them. We both benefited." The reptilian student who Kyle learned was named Zixthar spoke up. "So you admit you engineered them to serve you? How is that not slavery?" "Because they love us. Luna doesn't have to stay with me. She wants to." An insectoid student with compound eyes and 6 legs clicked her mandibles. "Love is a chemical reaction in the brain. You conditioned this creature to depend on you for survival. This is not advanced behavior. My people, the Klaxi, eliminated all lesser creatures from our world. We evolved beyond needing such primitive relationships." Other students nodded in agreement. Kyle felt his presentation falling apart. He looked down at Luna, who was sitting calmly, looking up at him with trust in her eyes. Professor Quinvera stood up. "That is enough. Kyle has shared his culture with us. We may not understand it, but we must respect it. This is why we are here, to learn from each other." But the damage was done. After class, students avoided Kyle even more than before. Some deliberately tried to confuse Luna by calling her name or making strange noises. One student tried to order Luna to sit in his own language, then laughed when she looked confused. Kyle started eating lunch alone in his room. Luna would rest her head on his lap while he ate, and he would tell her about his day. "They don't understand, Luna. They think you're just a simple animal." "But you're more than that. You're my best friend." Luna's tail wagged and she licked his hand. One evening, another human student arrived at the academy. His name was Danny Pierce, and he had brought his cat, Pepper. Kyle was so happy to meet another human that he almost cried. They sat together in the common area while their animals investigated each other. "It's been rough, hasn't it?" Danny asked. "Yeah, they think we're cruel for having pets. They don't understand that it's not about control." Danny nodded. "Pepper here pretty much does what she wants. She's definitely not anyone's slave." The orange cat was currently ignoring both of them, cleaning her paw. "How do we make them understand?" Kyle wondered. "I don't know, but we have to try. Maybe if we show them instead of telling them." Kyle thought about that. Maybe Danny was right, but how could they show aliens who had never known love from an animal what that love meant? How could they explain something that humans felt in their hearts but couldn't put into words? That night, Kyle lay in his bed with Luna sleeping on the floor beside him. Through his window, he could see Earth in the distance, a blue and green marble floating in space. He missed home. He missed his family. He missed people who understood why Luna mattered. Luna lifted her head and looked at him. Even in the dark, she knew he was sad. She stood up, walked to the bed, and put her paws up on the mattress. Kyle smiled and helped her up. She curled up beside him, warm and comforting. "Good girl," he whispered. Outside his door, Zixthar walked past on his way to his own room. He heard Kyle's voice through the door and paused. The human was talking to the animal like it was a person. Zixthar shook his head and continued walking. Humans were strange creatures indeed. But somewhere in his mind, a small question began to form. Why would someone talk so gently to a slave? Why would someone sound so grateful for something that had no choice? He pushed the thought away. Humans were primitive. That was all there was to it, or was it? The second week at Zenith Academy was worse than the first. Kyle had hoped that students would get used to seeing Luna and stop making comments, but instead, the mockery grew stronger. More alien students joined in, and what started as curious questions became deliberate harassment. Velnara, the insectoid student from the Klaxi species, seemed to take special pleasure in making Kyle uncomfortable. She would stand in front of Luna and click her mandibles rapidly, a sound that made the dog's ears go flat against her head. When Kyle asked her to stop, Velnara would say she was just trying to communicate with the animal. "If it is truly intelligent, it should be able to understand me," Velnara said one day in the cafeteria. Several students gathered around to watch. "Dog, can you understand me? Sit, stand, speak." Luna looked at Kyle, confused by the sharp clicking sounds and the attention from so many strange beings. She pressed against Kyle's leg, seeking comfort. "She understands English, not whatever you're doing," Kyle said, trying to keep his voice calm. "Ah, so it only understands commands in your language. That proves my point. It is conditioned to respond to specific sounds. That is not intelligence. That is training, like programming a machine." A crystalline being named Thrakesh floated closer. Unlike the others, she seemed more curious than cruel. Light pulsed through her body in patterns that Kyle's translator said meant, "Interesting." "I do not understand this relationship," Thrakesh said, her voice like wind chimes. "In my culture, we form bonds based on shared thoughts and mutual respect. How can you have mutual respect with a creature that cannot speak?" Kyle wanted to explain, but he didn't know how. How could he make them understand something that was so natural to humans? "She communicates in other ways. Her body language, her eyes, the sounds she makes. I know when she's happy or sad or scared, and she knows the same about me." Zixthar walked by and heard the conversation. He stopped and turned to face Kyle. "You interpret its reactions to mean things that make you feel good. But that does not mean the animal actually cares about you. It cares about food and shelter. You provide these things so it stays. Remove the food and your loyal friend would leave." "That's not true," Kyle said, his hands shaking. "Luna loves me." "Prove it," Zixthar challenged. "Leave it alone for a week without food from you. See if it stays. I'm not going to starve my dog to prove a point to you, because you know I am right." Zixthar walked away looking satisfied. Kyle felt tears burning in his eyes. He quickly left the cafeteria with Luna following close behind. Danny found him later in the dormitory hallway, sitting on the floor with his back against the wall. Luna was in his lap and he was hugging her tightly. "Hey man, I heard what happened," Danny said, sitting down next to him. Pepper the cat walked over and sniffed Luna's tail before deciding to ignore everyone and walk away. "They're never going to understand," Kyle said. "To them, we're just primitive humans who enslave animals. Maybe we need to show them different examples. I've been researching Earth animal history. Did you know that in some cities, cats controlled the rat population and saved millions of people from disease? Or that dogs have saved people from fires, found lost children, and even detected cancer in humans?" Kyle nodded. "I know. But they'll just say those are trained behaviors. They don't see it as partnership. Then we make them see it. Let's organize a presentation. A real one with videos and data. Show them what therapy dogs do in hospitals. Show them search and rescue operations. Show them the science behind the human-animal bond." Kyle looked up at his friend. "You think that will work?" "It's worth trying. What else can we do?" That evening, Kyle and Danny submitted a request to Professor Quinvera to give a special presentation about Earth animals. She approved it and scheduled it for the following week. They spent every free moment preparing, gathering videos, scientific studies, and historical records. But the harassment didn't stop. If anything, it got worse as word spread about the upcoming presentation. Students would make barking sounds when Kyle walked past. Someone put a food bowl outside his door with the word slave written on it in Galactic Standard. Another student tried to lure Luna away with food, then laughed when Kyle had to call her back. Luna was getting stressed. She didn't eat as much, and she stayed even closer to Kyle than before. At night, she would whimper in her sleep, and Kyle would wake up to comfort her. He started to wonder if bringing her had been a terrible mistake. The night before their presentation, Kyle couldn't sleep. He sat at his desk reviewing their notes while Luna slept on the bed behind him. Through his window, he could see ships moving between the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, where dogs were loved and understood, where no one questioned why a human and a dog could be friends. A message appeared on his datapad. It was from Station Commander Yervesh, the administrator who ran Harmony Circle. Kyle opened it nervously. The message read, "Mr. Morrison, I have received multiple complaints about your animal. Students report that it makes them uncomfortable and that its presence is disruptive. While you have permission to keep the animal, I must remind you that Zenith Academy is a place of learning for all species. If the situation does not improve, we may need to reconsider the permission. Please ensure your animal does not cause further issues." Kyle felt sick. They were blaming Luna for everything. She hadn't done anything wrong. She just existed, and that was enough to make the other students angry. He looked back at Luna, who was awake now, watching him. Her tail gave a small wag when their eyes met. In that moment, Kyle made a decision. He wouldn't send her home. He wouldn't give up. Tomorrow they would give their presentation, and he would make them understand. He had to. The next morning, the lecture hall was packed. Word had spread about the presentation, and students came from all departments. Some came to learn, but many came to see the humans defend their primitive practice. Kyle and Danny stood at the front of the room with Luna and Pepper. Professor Quinvera sat in the front row, her expression neutral. Kyle's hands were sweating as he started the first video. It showed a therapy dog visiting sick children in a hospital. The children's faces lit up when the dog entered the room. They hugged it, played with it, and for a moment they forgot about their pain. "This is what therapy dogs do," Kyle explained. "They help people heal, not just physically but emotionally. Studies show that petting a dog lowers blood pressure and reduces stress hormones." "The dog is trained to do this," Velnara interrupted. "It performs a task. How is this different from a machine?" Danny stepped forward. "Because a machine doesn't choose to care. Watch the dog's body language. See how gently it moves around the children? See how it stays calm even when a child accidentally pulls its ear? That's not programming. That's empathy." The presentation continued. They showed videos of search and rescue dogs finding people in collapsed buildings. They showed guide dogs helping blind humans navigate the world. They showed the scientific data on how humans and dogs evolved together, how both species changed because of their relationship. But the audience remained skeptical. Questions came fast, each one challenging their claims. Kyle felt his hope fading. They had shown everything they could think of, and still the aliens didn't understand. Then Zixthar stood up. I have a question. If these animals are truly your partners, why do they obey your commands? A partner does not obey. A partner chooses. Kyle opened his mouth to answer, but he didn't know what to say. Luna looked up at him, and he felt like he was failing her. Professor Quinvera stood up. That is enough for today. Kyle and Danny have given us much to think about. Class dismissed. Students filed out, talking amongst themselves. Kyle packed up their equipment, feeling defeated. Luna pressed against his leg, and he reached down to pet her. We tried, Danny said quietly. Yeah, Kyle replied. We tried, but trying hadn't been enough. 3 days after the failed presentation, Kyle woke up to alarm sirens blaring through the station. Red lights flashed in his room, and Luna jumped off the bed, barking in alarm. Kyle grabbed his datapad and read the emergency message scrolling across the screen. Solar flare warning. All students report to evacuation pods immediately. This is not a drill. Kyle's heart raced. He had learned about solar flares in orientation. The station's shields could usually handle them, but sometimes a flare was so powerful that everyone needed to get into the reinforced evacuation pods until it passed. He quickly pulled on his clothes and attached Luna's leash. The hallways were chaos. Students ran in all directions, some flying, some crawling, all heading toward the evacuation zones. Luna stayed close to Kyle, her body tense but controlled. Years of training helped her stay calm even when everything around her was panic. Move quickly but do not run. Voices announced in multiple languages. Follow the green lights to your assigned pods. Kyle followed the crowd, one hand holding Luna's leash, the other touching the wall to keep his balance as students pushed past him. A small alien child got knocked down near him, and Kyle stopped to help them up. By the time he continued, most of the students from his section had already gone ahead. He turned a corner and found the corridor to his evacuation zone blocked. Part of the ceiling had collapsed, probably from an earlier impact. Emergency barriers had activated, sealing off that route. Kyle cursed and looked at his datapad for an alternate route. This way, he muttered, turning back and taking a side corridor. Luna followed, her claws clicking on the metal floor. The alternate route was longer and more complicated. Kyle had to climb down 2 levels using maintenance ladders, which was difficult with Luna. He had to carry her down each ladder, her weight making his arms shake. By the time they reached the correct level, the corridors were empty. Everyone else had already reached safety. Kyle hurried toward the evacuation zone, following the green lights. Then Luna stopped suddenly, pulling back on her leash so hard that Kyle almost fell. Luna, come on. We have to go, Kyle urged, pulling on the leash, but Luna wouldn't move. She planted her feet and pulled in the opposite direction, whining urgently. She looked at Kyle, then down a dark side corridor, then back at Kyle. Her whining became more insistent. Girl, we don't have time for this. We need to get to the pod, Luna barked loud and sharp. She never barked like that unless something was wrong. Kyle had learned to trust that bark. Once she had barked like that when a gas pipe was leaking in their apartment on Earth. Another time when a stranger was trying to break into their building. That bark meant danger, or it meant someone needed help. Kyle looked down the dark corridor. His datapad showed nothing down there except storage rooms and maintenance access. But Luna was never wrong when she gave that bark. Okay, he said, making a decision. Show me. Luna immediately pulled him down the dark corridor. The emergency lights here were out, and Kyle had to use his datapad's flashlight to see. Luna moved with purpose, her nose to the ground, following something Kyle couldn't sense. They went deeper into the maintenance section. Kyle's datapad began beeping a warning that he was moving away from the evacuation zone. The announcement system reminded everyone that pods would seal in 5 minutes. But he trusted Luna, he had to. Then he heard it. A weak voice calling for help in a language his translator struggled with. Luna led him around a corner, and Kyle's flashlight found Zixthar. The reptilian student was trapped under a fallen beam. His green scales were dark with blood, and one of his legs was bent at a wrong angle. Equipment and debris surrounded him, and a small fire burned nearby from damaged electrical systems. Zixthar. Kyle ran to him, Luna following. Human? Zixthar's voice was weak. What are you doing here? You should be in the pods, so should you. What happened? I thought I left my datapad in the lab. Came back for it. The corridor collapsed. I tried to call for help, but communications are down from interference. Kyle looked at the beam pinning Zixthar. It was heavy metal, part of the station's support structure. He grabbed it and pulled, but it barely moved. He wasn't strong enough. Leave me, Zixthar said. Get to safety. The flare will hit in minutes. I'm not leaving you. Kyle pulled again, his muscles screaming. The beam shifted slightly. Luna surprised them both. She grabbed Kyle's sleeve in her mouth and pulled him toward a corner of the corridor. She let go and barked at something in the shadows. What is it, girl? Kyle shined his light and saw an emergency equipment locker. Inside were tools, including a hydraulic jack used for maintenance. Kyle grabbed it and ran back to Zixthar. Good girl, Luna. Good girl. He set up the jack under the beam and started pumping. Slowly, the beam began to lift. Luna stayed near Zixthar's head. The big alien looked at the dog with confusion and pain in his eyes. Luna did something then that surprised both of them. She lay down next to Zixthar's head and pressed her warm body against his neck, in the spot where Sorvians felt the most comfort. What is it doing? Zixthar whispered. She's trying to help. She knows you're hurt. Kyle kept pumping the jack. The beam lifted higher. Kyle moved around and grabbed Zixthar under his arms. This is going to hurt. On 3. 1, 2, 3. He pulled, and Zixthar screamed as Kyle dragged him free from under the beam. The station shook. An announcement blared. Final warning. Evacuation pod sealing in 60 seconds. Kyle looked at Zixthar's injured leg. He couldn't walk. Kyle was strong for a human, but Zixthar was bigger and heavier. Still, he had to try. He got Zixthar's arm over his shoulder and lifted him up. Zixthar groaned in pain. Luna, let's go, Kyle shouted. They moved as fast as they could. Kyle half carrying Zixthar, Luna running ahead and then back as if checking on them. The station shook again, harder this time. Lights flickered. Kyle's legs burned, his back screamed, but he kept moving. They turned the final corner and saw the evacuation zone ahead. The pods were starting to seal. Wait, Kyle screamed. Someone's here, wait. A medical team saw them and rushed forward. They took Zixthar from Kyle and carried him into a pod. Hands pulled Kyle in after them, and Luna jumped in last. The door sealed with a heavy clang, just as the station's shields lit up bright white outside the small window. Kyle collapsed on the floor, breathing hard. Luna was beside him instantly, licking his face. Medical personnel worked on Zixthar, scanning his injuries and stabilizing his leg. The solar flare hit. Everyone felt it, a deep vibration through the entire station. The lights in the pod dimmed as all power went to the shields. For 30 seconds they waited in near darkness. Then the shaking stopped, the lights came back on, and an announcement said the danger had passed. Kyle sat against the wall, exhausted. Luna was in his lap and he hugged her close. Across the pod, Zixthar was conscious, being treated by medics. The alien's eyes were on Luna, a strange expression on his face. A medic approached Kyle. You both should get checked. That was brave but foolish. You almost died. We couldn't leave him, Kyle said simply. The dog found him? The medic asked, looking at Luna with new interest. Yeah, she knew someone needed help. She wouldn't leave until we found him. The medic made a note on her data pad. Interesting. Very interesting. The pod doors opened and everyone filed out. Station security wanted to talk to Kyle about the rescue. News spread quickly through the station about what happened. Students who had been mocking Kyle days earlier now looked at him differently. But Kyle only cared about one thing. He looked back at Zixthar being placed on a medical stretcher. Their eyes met and something passed between them. Not words, not thoughts, just understanding. Zixthar nodded slightly, then looked at Luna. The dog's tail wagged once. Thank you, Zixthar said quietly before the medics took him away. Kyle felt Luna push her head into his hand. He scratched behind her ears. You're amazing, girl. You saved his life. Luna's tail wagged harder. She didn't know she had done anything special. She had just known someone needed help, and she had helped. That was what she did. That was who she was, and finally, someone besides Kyle had seen it. Zixthar spent 3 days in the medical center. His leg was healing with the help of advanced alien medicine, but the doctors wanted to keep him for observation. During those 3 days, something changed in him. He couldn't stop thinking about what happened. Luna had no reason to help him. He had mocked her, called her a slave, dismissed her as a simple animal. Yet when he was trapped and dying, she had found him. More than that, she had stayed with him, offered him comfort when Kyle was working to free him. He remembered looking into her eyes as she lay beside him. They weren't the eyes of a slave or a simple creature. There had been something there, something that made him feel less alone in his pain. He couldn't explain it, not in any scientific way his people would accept, but he knew what he had felt. On the fourth day, Zixthar was released from medical care. He walked with a support device that helped his healing leg, but he could move around. Instead of going back to his dormitory, he went looking for Kyle. He found him in the common area with Danny and their animals. Kyle looked surprised when Zixthar approached and Luna lifted her head, her tail beginning to wag cautiously. "May I sit?" Zixthar asked. Kyle nodded, moving over to make room. Luna watched the big reptilian carefully. "I wanted to thank you again," Zixthar said, his voice formal. "You risked your life for mine. That is a debt I can never repay. You don't owe me anything. Anyone would have done the same, would they? I am not sure. But I did not come only to thank you. I came to ask your permission for something." Zixthar looked at Luna. "May I spend time with your animal?" "I wish to understand." Kyle's eyes widened. "You want to spend time with Luna?" "Yes, I have been thinking about what happened. I have many questions. My people have theories about animal behavior, but theories are not the same as experience. I wish to experience." Danny grinned. "Man, that's great. Of course he'll let you. Right, Kyle?" Kyle looked at Luna, who was still watching Zixthar with her intelligent eyes. "Luna gets to decide too. Luna, what do you think?" Luna stood up, walked slowly to Zixthar, and sniffed his hand. The reptilian held very still, afraid to move. Luna sniffed for a few more seconds, then her tail began to wag. She pushed her head against his hand. "She likes you," Kyle said, smiling. "Yeah, you can spend time with her. Let me show you how." Over the following days, Zixthar became a regular visitor. Kyle taught him how to pet Luna properly, how to play with her, how to read her body language. At first, Zixthar was awkward, his movements too stiff, his voice too formal. But Luna was patient, as therapy dogs always are. One afternoon, Professor Quinvera asked to use the security footage from the rescue in her cultural studies class. Kyle agreed, and the video played on the large screen for all the students to see. They watched Kyle and Luna in the dark corridor. They watched Luna find Zixthar, watched her lie beside him offering comfort. They watched Kyle work to free his former tormentor, watched Luna help find the tools. They watched the desperate escape. When the video ended, the classroom was silent. "I want you to analyze what you just saw," Professor Quinvera said. "From your cultural perspectives, explain the behavior of the human and the animal." Velnara spoke first. "The human acted predictably. His species forms social bonds and helps group members in danger. But the animal's behavior remains a puzzle. It was trained to follow and obey, yet it acted independently. It led the human away from safety toward danger. That contradicts conditioning. Perhaps it is pack behavior," another student suggested. The animal recognized another pack member in distress. "But Zixthar was not part of their pack," Velnara countered. "The animal had no logical reason to search for him." Thrakesh, the crystalline being, floated forward. Her body pulsed with lights as she spoke. "I have been studying the animal since the rescue. I observe it in multiple spectrums of light. Its emotional responses are complex. When it sees Kyle, specific patterns appear. When it sees strangers, different patterns. When it found Zixthar, the patterns showed what I can only describe as concern." "Concern? An emotion?" Velnara's mandibles clicked skeptically. "Yes, the animal feels genuine emotions. This is not programming or training. This is consciousness expressing itself differently than ours, but no less real." Zixthar, sitting in the back with his support device, raised his hand. All eyes turned to him. He had been quiet since returning to class, and many students were curious about what he would say. "May I speak?" he asked Professor Quinvera. "Please do." Zixthar stood up carefully. "I have believed all my life that Sorvians are superior to other species. We are stronger. We live longer. We have conquered many worlds. I thought primitive behaviors like keeping animals were beneath us. I was wrong." The classroom remained silent. Zixthar continued. "When I was trapped, I was afraid. I thought I would die alone in the dark. Then the human came, and with him came Luna. I do not know how she found me. I do not know why she cared. But I know what I felt when she lay beside me." His voice became softer. "I felt less afraid. I felt like someone cared if I lived or died. Not because of duty or logic, but because she simply cared." He looked at Kyle, who was sitting near the front. "Since then, I have spent time with Luna. I have learned to play with her, to feed her, to understand her language. And I have discovered something. She is happy to see me. When I arrive, her tail wags. When I am sad, she sits close. She asks nothing from me except companionship. Is that slavery? Is that programming? Zixthar shook his head. No, that is something my people lost long ago. We are strong and advanced, but we are also lonely. We have efficiency, but we have lost joy. Luna showed me what we are missing. He sat down, his leg clearly hurting. But his eyes were bright with emotion. Professor Quinvera nodded slowly. Thank you, Zixthar. What you described touches on something important. Different species define advancement differently. Some measure it by technology or conquest. But perhaps true advancement includes the capacity for connections that transcend logic. Danny raised his hand. Can I add something? Go ahead. Danny stood up with Pepper in his arms. The cat looked annoyed at being held. Humans have had a lot of problems. Wars, pollution, inequality. We're not perfect. But we've also kept our connection to nature. We didn't eliminate all other species from Earth. We learned to live with them. Dogs, cats, horses, birds, even the wild animals. They make our world richer. Maybe that's a kind of advancement too. More hands went up. Students began asking questions, real questions this time, not challenges. They asked about different Earth animals, about how relationships with animals worked, about whether other creatures could form such bonds. Kyle answered as best he could, and for the first time he felt heard. Students took notes. Even Velnara asked questions, though she still seemed skeptical. After class, something remarkable happened. A small group of students approached Kyle nervously. One of them, a shy being with purple fur, asked quietly, "May I pet your dog?" Kyle looked at Luna. "Luna, sit." Luna sat, her tail wagging. "You can pet her gently. Like this." Kyle showed them how to approach calmly and pet Luna's head. The purple-furred student reached out a trembling paw and touched Luna's head. Luna's tail wagged harder. The student's eyes widened. "It is so soft and warm, and it likes being touched. She loves it," Kyle said. One by one, other students came to pet Luna. Some were scared at first, but Luna was patient with all of them. She sat calmly, letting them touch her, her tail wagging the whole time. Thrakesh floated close and extended a crystalline limb. When she touched Luna, her whole body pulsed with rainbow colors. Fascinating. The emotional patterns are even stronger up close. This creature genuinely enjoys interaction. Zixthar watched from nearby, leaning on his support device. A small smile crossed his reptilian face. Things were changing. Slowly, but they were changing. That evening, Kyle received a message from Station Commander Irvesh. He opened it nervously, remembering the last message warning him about complaints. But this message was different. "Mr. Morrison, I have received numerous requests from students wanting to learn more about Earth animals and their relationships with humans. In light of recent events, I am approving a new elective course on Earth animal companionship. You and Mr. Pierce will assist in developing the curriculum." Well done. Kyle read the message 3 times to make sure he understood it correctly. Then he showed Danny, and they both laughed with relief and joy. "We did it," Danny said. "They're actually listening." "Luna did it," Kyle corrected, scratching behind her ears. She showed them what words couldn't. Luna's tail wagged, happy just to be near her human, not knowing that she had changed minds and opened hearts across an entire space station. 2 months passed, and life at Zenith Academy changed in ways Kyle never expected. The new course on Earth Animal Companionship was popular, with students signing up faster than they could accommodate. Kyle and Danny taught small groups about dogs, cats, and other animals, showing videos and sharing stories. Luna and Pepper became unofficial teaching assistants, demonstrating behavior and allowing careful interaction. But not everyone was happy about these changes. Student named Greshinar from the Vortaki species watched these developments with growing anger. The Vortaki were an old and traditional species who believed in strict hierarchy and order. To Greshinar, allowing animals on the station was a corruption of proper civilization. He began gathering support from like-minded students. Together, they drafted a formal petition to the station council, demanding that all Earth animals be banned from Harmony Circle. They argued that keeping animals violated the Galactic Union's Sentient Rights Charter and set a dangerous example for younger civilizations. The petition gained signatures quickly. Many students remained uncomfortable with the idea of human-animal bonds. Even after seeing Luna's rescue of Zixthar, they signed because it aligned with their cultural values or because they genuinely believed animals shouldn't be kept by intelligent species. Kyle learned about the petition when Commander Irvesh summoned him to her office. The commander, a tall being with silver skin and 4 eyes, looked at him with a serious expression. "Mr. Morrison, are you aware of the petition being circulated?" "No, Commander." "What petition?" She displayed it on a screen. Kyle's heart sank as he read the demands and saw the long list of signatures. They want to ban all Earth animals. They want to send Luna home. The petition has sufficient support to trigger a formal hearing before the station council. You will have the opportunity to defend your position, but I must warn you. This is serious. The council takes such petitions very seriously. Kyle felt dizzy. When is the hearing? 1 week from today. I suggest you prepare carefully. You will be defending not just your dog, but the entire concept of your relationship with animals. That is a heavy burden. Kyle left the office in shock. He found Danny and told him everything. They sat in Kyle's room, both animals sensing the stress and staying close to their humans. "What are we going to do?" Kyle asked. "How do we defend something that's just a part of being human?" "We tell the truth," Danny said. "We show them what these animals mean to us. We explain the history, the science, the emotion of it all. We tried that before. It didn't work. But things are different now. Zixthar understands. Thrakesh understands. Even some of the students who were against us have changed their minds. We have allies now." Kyle looked at Luna, who was resting her head on his knee. Her brown eyes looked up at him with complete trust. "I can't lose her, Danny. She's my best friend. Then we fight for her. We fight for all of them." The week passed too quickly. Kyle and Danny prepared their defense, gathering every piece of evidence they could find. They reached out to allies, asking them to speak at the hearing. Zixthar agreed immediately, as did Thrakesh. Even Professor Quinvera offered to testify about the educational value of the program. The day of the hearing arrived. The council chamber was huge, with seats arranged in circles around a central speaking area. Council members from different species sat in elevated positions, looking down at the floor where Kyle stood with Luna beside him. The chamber was packed with students who came to watch. Greshnar spoke first, presenting the petition and the arguments against allowing animals on the station. He spoke eloquently about sentient rights, about the dignity of consciousness, about how keeping animals was a practice that belonged to primitive cultures. "We do not question the humans' right to their own culture," Greshnar said, "but this station represents the best of the Galactic Union. We should not allow practices that contradict our core values. These animals are kept in captivity, made dependent on their keepers, unable to live free lives. This is not advancement. This is exploitation." Many in the audience nodded in agreement. Kyle's hands were sweating. How could he argue against values that seemed so noble? When it was Kyle's turn to speak, he walked to the center of the chamber. Luna followed, her nails clicking on the smooth floor. Kyle had prepared a speech, had practiced it dozens of times, but now that he stood there with all eyes on him, the words felt wrong. He looked down at Luna, and she looked up at him, waiting patiently. In that moment, Kyle forgot about his prepared speech. "I don't know how to argue with the logic you've heard," Kyle began, his voice shaking slightly. "I don't know how to prove that what Luna and I have is more than just training or dependency. But I know what I feel and I know what she feels." Luna did something then that no one expected. She walked away from Kyle, slowly making her way across the floor. Students leaned forward, wondering what the dog would do. Luna walked directly to Zixthar, who was sitting in the front row waiting to testify. She stopped in front of him and placed her head on his lap. The chamber fell completely silent. Zixthar looked down at Luna and his eyes filled with tears. In Sorvian culture, showing emotion publicly was rare, but Zixthar didn't hide it. He placed his hand on Luna's head and looked up at the council. "May I speak?" he asked. The head counselor nodded. "You were scheduled to testify." "Please proceed." Zixthar stood carefully, his leg still healing. Luna stayed close to him. "I was the loudest voice against the humans and their animals. I called Luna a slave. I mocked Kyle for keeping her. I believed, as Greshnar believes, that such relationships were primitive and beneath advanced species." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "Then Luna saved my life. Not because she was trained to, not because she had to. She saved me because she recognized that I needed help. In my darkest moment, when I thought I would die alone, this animal that I had tormented brought me help and stayed with me until I was safe." Zixthar's voice grew stronger. "Since then, I have spent time with Luna every day. I have learned her language and she has learned mine. When I arrive, she is happy to see me. When I am in pain from my injuries, she knows without being told and she stays close. She asks for nothing except to be near those she cares about. He looked around the chamber at all the faces watching. My species eliminated all animals from our world long ago. We believed we were becoming more advanced. But now I wonder what we lost. Luna has shown me something I never knew I was missing. Joy, unconditional acceptance, love that asks for nothing in return except love. Greshnar stood up. You speak of emotions, but emotions can be manufactured. The animal shows happiness because it has been conditioned to associate you with food and safety. Then explain this, Zixthar said. Luna did not know me. I had been cruel to her, yet she led Kyle into danger to save me. Where is the conditioning in that? Danny stood up next carrying Pepper. And explain my cat. Cats are not obedient. Pepper does what she wants when she wants. She doesn't come when called. She ignores me when it suits her. Yet she sleeps on my bed every night. She purrs when I'm sad. She chooses to stay with me. Is that slavery? Thrakesh floated forward, her crystalline body pulsing with light. I have studied these animals with every instrument available to me. Their emotional responses are genuine and complex. They feel joy, sadness, fear, and love. These are not programmed responses. This is consciousness expressing itself in a different form than ours. Professor Quinvera stood. The Galactic Union was founded on a principle that diversity makes us stronger. Earth's relationship with its animals is unique in the known galaxy. Perhaps instead of fearing it, we should learn from it. These humans have maintained their connection to nature while advancing technologically. They have not lost their capacity for simple joy and companionship. Is that not a form of wisdom? One by one, students stood to speak. Some supported the ban, but more spoke about how meeting Luna and Pepper had changed their understanding. They talked about the comfort they felt when petting the animals, the curiosity they sparked, the lessons about empathy they taught. Finally, the head counselor raised a hand for silence. We have heard enough testimony. The council will now deliberate. The council members turned to each other, speaking in low voices. Kyle stood with Luna, his heart pounding. Danny joined him, and Zixthar moved to stand with them too. A show of solidarity. After what felt like hours but was only minutes, the head counselor spoke. We have reached a decision. The petition to ban Earth animals from Harmony Circle is denied. Kyle felt like he couldn't breathe. However, the counselor continued, we recognize that these animals represent a significant cultural difference that requires understanding. Therefore, we are implementing new requirements. All students at Zenith Academy will be required to complete a basic course on Earth animal companionship as part of their cultural studies. This will ensure understanding and respect for this unique relationship. The counselor looked directly at Kyle. Young human, you and your companion have taught us something valuable today. You have shown us that advancement is not just about technology or logic. It is also about maintaining our capacity for simple, genuine connections. Luna may stay. The chamber erupted in mixed reactions. Some cheered, others remained.